The cold winter wind blew through the streets of Seoul as Lee Do-han pulled his thin jacket tighter around his shoulders. The night was getting darker, and most people had already gone home after the big soccer game at the Olympic Stadium. Do-han watched them leave, their excited voices talking about how they had seen Lionel Messi play in person. Do-han hadn't seen the game. He couldn't afford a ticket. Instead, he had spent his day like any other, collecting empty cans and cardboard boxes to sell for a few won. At 55 years old, with gray starting to show in his dark hair, Do-han had lived on these streets for 3 years. Life hadn't always been this way. He used to have a family, a job at a car factory, and a small apartment. But when the factory closed down and his wife got sick, everything fell apart. The stadium lights were turning off one by one. Do-han started walking toward his usual sleeping spot near the back of the stadium, where the security guards were kind enough to let him stay. The spot was hidden from view and kept him dry when it rained. As he walked, something caught his eye. A leather bag lying under a bench, half hidden in shadows. Do-han looked around. The parking lot was almost empty now, with just a few cars left. He walked closer to the bag. It was made of expensive brown leather, the kind he used to dream of owning when he had a job. A small tag hung from the handle, but he couldn't read the foreign writing in the dim light. He should just leave it, he thought. Rich people's problems weren't his problems. But then he remembered how his mother had raised him. "Your character is what you do when nobody is watching," she used to say. Even after all these years on the street, those words still meant something to him. Do-han picked up the bag. It was heavier than he expected, and something inside made a soft humming sound. He figured it must be a phone or maybe a laptop. As he lifted it, a strange blue light leaked out from the zipper's edges. Do-han had never seen anything like it before. Just then, he heard voices approaching. Security guards doing their final rounds. Do-han quickly stepped back into the shadows, still holding the bag. He didn't want them to think he was stealing it. The guards walked past, their flashlights sweeping across the ground, but they didn't see him. When they were gone, Do-han found a nearby streetlight and looked at the bag more carefully. The tag had a name on it, but the letters were hard to read. He pulled out his old phone, the one thing he kept charged at the public library each day. Using its light, he could finally make out the words, "Messi." Do-han's heart started beating faster. He had heard enough conversations today to know who Messi was. This wasn't just any lost bag. It belonged to one of the most famous athletes in the world. The blue light inside pulsed again, as if responding to his discovery. He knew what he had to do. The right thing would be to return it, even though the money from selling it could feed him for months. But there was something else too. Something about that strange blue light that made him uneasy. This wasn't just about doing the right thing anymore. Something told him this bag was more important than just expensive leather and a famous name. Do-han put his phone away and held the bag close to his chest. The night was getting colder, and he had a long walk ahead of him. He had seen on the news which hotel the soccer teams were staying at. It would take him 2 hours to walk there, but he didn't mind. For the first time in years, he felt like he had a purpose. As he walked away from the stadium, the bag's mysterious blue light continued to pulse softly against his chest, like a heartbeat in the dark Seoul night. Do-han didn't know it yet, but this simple act of honesty was about to change his life forever. Do-han found a quiet corner in a small park near the hotel where the soccer teams were staying. His feet hurt from walking, but he needed to check the bag's contents before returning it. If something was missing, people might think he had taken it. The blue light was still pulsing, stronger now, and he could no longer ignore his curiosity. With careful hands, he opened the zipper. Inside, he found what he expected. Expensive clothes with tags he didn't recognize, a pair of soccer shoes, and some papers in Spanish. But there was something else, something that didn't belong. Hidden between the clothes was a metal device about the size of his hand. It was silver and smooth, with no buttons or screens, but it was the source of the blue light. Du-han picked it up carefully. It felt warm, unlike any metal he had touched before. As soon as his fingers touched it, the blue light grew brighter, and strange symbols appeared on its surface. They looked like writing, but not in any language he knew. The device made a soft humming sound that reminded him of the big electrical transformers near his old factory. He quickly put the device back in the bag. In a nearby store window, a TV was showing the late-night news. Du-han moved closer to watch. The news anchor was talking about Messi's visit to Seoul and the successful game. Then the screen showed Messi himself, speaking to reporters outside the hotel. "Yes, I discovered my bag was missing after the game," Messi was saying in Spanish, with Korean subtitles below. "It contains some very important items. We are offering a reward for its safe return." Du-han looked down at the bag in his hands. A reward would mean food, and maybe even a room for a while. But something about that strange device bothered him. Why would a soccer player carry something like that? And why did it react when he touched it? Just then, he noticed two men in black suits walking down the street, looking at their phones. They moved differently from regular people, more alert, more purposeful. One of them held what looked like a metal detector, but it was smaller and more complex. The man kept checking it and pointing it in different directions. Du-han stepped back into the shadows. Years of living on the street had taught him when something wasn't right. These men weren't hotel security or police. They were looking for something specific, and he had a strong feeling it was the device in the bag. He watched as they walked past his hiding spot. Their device made a sharp beeping sound, and they stopped. Du-han held his breath. The blue light in the bag suddenly dimmed, as if it knew it needed to hide. After a moment, the men's device stopped beeping, and they continued down the street. Du-han waited until they were gone before looking at the bag again. The whole situation felt dangerous now. He had thought he was just returning a lost bag to a famous soccer player, but clearly there was more happening here. The device wasn't just expensive technology. It was something that powerful people were actively searching for. He thought about leaving the bag somewhere and walking away. It would be safer. But then he remembered the kindness of the security guards who let him sleep near the stadium, and the library staff who let him charge his phone. Not everyone treated him like he was invisible. Maybe this was his chance to show that homeless people could be trusted, that they could do the right thing. Du-han stood up straighter and gripped the bag firmly. The hotel was just 2 blocks away. Whatever this device was, whatever was really going on, he would make sure the bag got back to its owner. But as he walked toward the hotel, he couldn't shake the feeling that his life was about to change in ways he couldn't imagine. The hotel lobby was bright and warm when Du-han walked through the glass doors. He felt out of place immediately. The marble floor shone like water, and well-dressed people sat in expensive chairs. A security guard started walking toward him, but Du-han held up the bag before the guard could speak. "This belongs to Mr. Messi," Du-han said quietly. "I found it near the stadium." The guard's expression changed from suspicion to surprise. He spoke quickly into his radio, and within minutes, 3 men in suits appeared. They looked different from the men Du-han had seen on the street earlier. These men were Messi's team staff, and they carefully checked the bag. "Everything seems to be here," one of them said, looking relieved. "Mr. Messi would like to thank you in person. Please come with us." Du-han followed them to a private elevator. His old shoes made no sound on the thick carpet. As they went up, he noticed a woman had joined them. She wore a simple black dress and carried a tablet, but something about her seemed different. She watched Du-han with unusual interest. "I am Kim Ji-woo," she said in perfect Korean. "I work with the organizing committee. That was very honest of you to return the bag." Before Du-han could reply, the elevator doors opened. They led him to a suite where Lionel Messi was waiting with a few other people. The famous soccer player smiled warmly and walked over to shake Du-han's hand. "Thank you," Messi said in English, while someone translated to Korean. You are a good man. Not many would return a bag like this. Du-Han nodded politely, but he noticed that Ji-woo was now standing near the bag. Her hands moved quickly as she checked something inside it. The blue light flickered once, visible through the leather, but only Du-Han seemed to notice. Messi's staff brought out papers for Du-Han to sign and handed him an envelope. A reward for your honesty, they explained. Inside was enough money to live comfortably for several months. As the meeting ended, Du-Han saw Ji-woo slip something into her pocket. He was sure it was the strange device. Messi didn't seem to notice or care, which made Du-Han even more confused. Why would a soccer player have such a device but not mind when it disappeared? In the elevator going down, Ji-woo stayed with Du-Han while the others left on a different floor. They were alone. The device you saw in the bag, she said quietly. Did it respond to you? Du-Han's heart beat faster. I don't know what you mean. The blue light, she continued. Did it get brighter when you touched it? He looked at her carefully. She didn't seem threatening, but her eyes were intense and serious. Yes, he admitted finally. It did. What is it? Ji-woo smiled, but it was a careful smile. Would you like a job, Mr. Lee Du-Han? A real job, doing something important. How do you know my name? He asked, surprised. We know many things, she replied. And we've been looking for someone like you. Someone honest, someone who does the right thing even when it's hard. Someone who the device responds to. The elevator reached the lobby, but Ji-woo held the door closed button. Meet me tomorrow at sunrise, she said, handing him a card with an address. That is, if you want to know the truth about what you found today. The doors opened, and Ji-woo walked away, leaving Du-Han standing there with the reward money in his pocket and even more questions in his mind. Through the hotel's glass doors, he could see the men in black suits still searching the streets outside. Whatever he had stumbled into, there was no going back now. Du-Han spent the night in a small hotel room, his first real bed in 3 years. He had used some of the reward money, knowing he needed to look presentable for whatever was coming next. The address Ji-woo had given him led to a coffee shop in the quiet part of the city. When he arrived at sunrise, Ji-woo was already there. She sat at an outside table, wearing the same simple black dress. The coffee shop was empty except for them. Good morning, she said, pointing to the chair across from her. I see you decided to come. Du-Han sat down. A cup of hot coffee waited for him. The device, he said. What is it? Ji-woo pulled something from her bag. The silver device from Messi's bag. In the morning light, it looked even stranger. Touch it, she said. Du-Han reached out slowly. As soon as his fingers touched the metal, the blue light returned, brighter than before. The strange symbols appeared again, but this time they moved and changed. Only 1 in every million humans can activate it like that, Ji-woo explained. We've been using major sporting events as cover to test people. The device was never really Messi's. We just needed a way to get it near large crowds. What is it for? Du-Han asked, pulling his hand back. It's a key, she said. A key made by people who aren't from Earth. Du-Han looked at her carefully, waiting for her to smile or laugh. She didn't. 3 years ago, Ji-woo continued, a small ship landed in the mountains. They came in peace, but they were careful. They gave us this key and said they would return when we found someone who could use it. Someone with the right genetic pattern. Du-Han looked at his hands. They were rough from years of work and street life. Why me? We don't know, Ji-woo said. But you're the first person in Korea who has made it respond this strongly. And more importantly, you proved you were honest. You could have sold the bag, sold the device, but you didn't. A black car pulled up beside the coffee shop. We have a facility, Ji-woo said. A place where we study these things. Would you like to see it? Du-Han thought about his life on the streets, about the years spent invisible to most people. Now he was being offered a chance to be part of something important. something bigger than himself. "What exactly are you offering me?" he asked. "A job, a home, a chance to help prepare humanity for what's coming. The aliens who left this key, they're planning to return. We need people they can trust, people who can prove that humanity is ready." Doohan looked at the device again. The symbols were still moving, almost like they were waiting for his decision. "There are others out there who want this technology," Jiwoo added. "The men you saw searching the streets, they work for people who wouldn't use it wisely. We need to protect it, and now we need to protect you too." A memory flashed in Doohan's mind. His mother's words about character, about doing the right thing when nobody was watching. Maybe that's what his whole life had been preparing him for. "Okay," he said finally. "Show me." Jiwoo smiled and stood up. As they walked to the car, she handed him a new ID card. It had his photo and a job title: Special Diplomatic Consultant. "Welcome to the team, Mr. Lee," she said as they drove away from his old life. "Now let's go meet your new colleagues. Some of them aren't from around here." The car drove for 2 hours, leaving Seoul behind and heading into the mountains. They passed through 3 security checkpoints before reaching what looked like a regular office building surrounded by trees. Doohan noticed cameras everywhere and guards who tried to look like normal security but moved like soldiers. Inside, Jiwoo led him to an elevator that required both a key card and her fingerprint. They went down instead of up, and Doohan felt his ears pop as they descended deep underground. When the doors opened, he saw a different world. The underground facility was massive, with bright white halls and rooms filled with strange equipment. People in lab coats walked quickly between rooms, carrying tablets and discussing things in low voices. Through one large window, Doohan saw what looked like a piece of metal floating in midair. "This is Park Sun-ho," Jiwoo said, introducing him to an older man with kind eyes and gray hair. "He will be your teacher." Sun-ho smiled and shook Doohan's hand. "Welcome to the Institute," he said. "How much has Jiwoo told you?" "That aliens are real," Doohan replied, "and that they're coming back." Sun-ho nodded. "Yes, but there's much more. Follow me." They walked into a large room with comfortable chairs and a wall made entirely of screens. Sun-ho pressed a button, and the screens came alive with images of stars and galaxies. 3 years ago, Sun-ho explained, they came to Earth in secret. They didn't want to cause panic, so they contacted only a few governments. They're called the Guides, and they've been helping other worlds join a larger community of civilizations. Doohan watched as the screen showed images of strange ships and beautiful alien cities. "Why did they leave?" he asked. "They wanted us to prove ourselves ready," Sun-ho said. "The key you activated, it's part of their test. They believe that genetic compatibility with their technology is linked to emotional and moral development. Someone who can use their devices is usually someone who can help bridge the gap between different species." Over the next few weeks, Doohan's training began. In the mornings, Sun-ho taught him about the different alien species they knew about. In the afternoons, Jiwoo helped him understand the strange technology. Doohan learned that the floating metal he had seen was part of a universal translation system. He was given new clothes, a room in the facility, and most importantly, respect. The scientists and staff treated him like he belonged there, not like the homeless man he had been. Sometimes at night, he would touch the key device and watch the blue symbols dance, wondering what the aliens had seen in his genetics that made him special. One day, during a break in his training, Sun-ho found him practicing with the translation device. "You're learning faster than anyone expected," Sun-ho said. "But are you ready for what comes next?" "What do you mean?" Doohan asked. "Next week, we're expecting our first official alien visitor since they left the key. They want to meet the human who activated it. They want to meet you." Doohan looked at his reflection in the shiny wall. He saw someone different from the man who had slept behind the stadium. His clothes were clean, his hair was neat, and his eyes had a new purpose. "I'm ready," he said, and for the first time in years, He truly believed in himself. Du-Han was practicing with the translation device when the alarm started. Red lights flashed through the underground facility, and people began running in the hallways. Through the window of his training room, he saw Sun-Ho hurrying toward him, with Ji-Woo close behind. "We have a situation," Sun-Ho said as they entered. A ship just appeared in Earth's orbit. They didn't announce themselves. They didn't follow any of the protocols. Ji-Woo checked her tablet. "They're requesting to land here, at our facility." "Who are they?" Du-Han asked. "Not the guides," Sun-Ho replied. "Another species we haven't met before. They say they detected the key's activation and came to investigate." The key device, which Du-Han now carried with him always, began to pulse with blue light. The symbols on its surface moved faster than he had ever seen before. "World governments are panicking," Ji-Woo reported. "Military forces are going on high alert. If we don't handle this carefully, the whole world will know about aliens before we're ready." Sun-Ho looked at Du-Han. "The translation system shows they're sending a small shuttle down. They want to meet the key holder. That's you, Du-Han." Du-Han felt fear in his stomach, but also something else, a strange feeling of responsibility. "What do you need me to do?" "Meet them," Ji-Woo said. "You're the only one who can use the key. Maybe you can understand why they're here." The facility shook slightly as the alien shuttle landed in a hidden hangar above them. Security teams moved into position, looking nervous with their weapons. Du-Han watched on the screens as the shuttle's door opened. The aliens were tall and thin, with skin that looked like silver cloth. They moved gracefully, almost floating. There were 3 of them, and they carried no visible weapons. "Please," Sun-Ho said to Du-Han, "go to the meeting room. We'll be watching and listening through the translation system." Du-Han walked to the large meeting room, his heart beating fast. The key in his pocket grew warmer. When the aliens entered, they stopped and looked at him with eyes that changed color like opals. "You hold the guide's key," one of them said through the translation system. "But you are not what we expected." "What did you expect?" Du-Han asked. "Power, wealth, status. The guides usually choose those who lead societies. Yet you." "I lived on the streets," Du-Han said honestly. "But I tried to do what was right." The alien's eyes shifted to a deep blue color. "The key. Show us how you use it." Du-Han took out the device. As soon as he touched it, the blue light filled the room, brighter than ever before. The symbols moved and danced, and suddenly new symbols appeared, ones he had never seen before. The aliens stepped back, their skin rippling with surprise. "It speaks of you," they said. "It tells your story. The guides were right to trust you." "Trust me with what?" Du-Han asked. "The key is not just a test. It is a warning. There are others coming. Those who would take advantage of developing worlds like yours. The guides needed to find someone who would protect Earth not for power, but for the right reasons." The facility's alarms were still flashing, and somewhere above, governments were deciding whether to reveal the truth about aliens to the world. Everything was about to change, and somehow, a homeless man who had simply tried to return a lost bag was now at the center of it all. The meeting room was tense as Du-Han sat with the silver-skinned aliens. Through the facility's screens, he could see military aircraft circling high above, and news reports were beginning to talk about strange lights in the sky. Time was running out. "Why did you really come here?" Du-Han asked the aliens. His years on the street had taught him to spot when someone wasn't telling the whole truth. Even with these strange beings, he could sense there was more to their story. The tallest alien's eyes shifted to a deep purple color. "We came to warn you. The key you hold, others are looking for it. Dangerous ones. We had to make sure it was safe." Ji-Woo and Sun-Ho watched from behind the observation window as Du-Han thought carefully about his next words. He remembered long nights on the street, watching people walk past him like he wasn't there. He remembered how it felt to be treated with suspicion, just because of how he looked or where he slept. You didn't trust the guide's choice, Du Han said slowly. Because I'm not rich or powerful, because I lived on the streets. He held up the key, which glowed softly in his hand. But maybe that's exactly why the key chose me. The aliens looked at each other, their skin rippling with changing patterns. The translation system hummed as they spoke in their own language among themselves. Explain, one of them said finally. When you live on the streets, you learn things, Du Han said. You learn how to tell good people from bad ones. You learn that power and money don't make someone trustworthy. Most importantly, you learn how it feels to be an outsider. The key in his hand grew warmer, and the symbols began to move in new patterns. The aliens watched with intense interest. Your people are worried about Earth, Du Han continued. You think we're not ready for the wider galaxy. You think we might join with the wrong allies because we're impressed by power and technology. That's why you came without warning, to test us. The aliens' eyes changed to a bright gold color, which Du Han had learned meant surprise. When I found Messi's bag, I could have sold it. When I found this key, I could have used it for myself. But I didn't, because doing the right thing matters more than power or money. Isn't that the kind of person you want protecting Earth? Sun Ho pressed a button on the translation system. The military is demanding answers. We need to decide what to do. Du Han stood up straight. Tell them the truth. Tell them Earth has friends among the stars, but we need to prove we can be trusted. Tell them we passed a test today. The aliens rose as well, their silver skin glowing softly. You understand more than we expected, they said. Perhaps the guides were wiser than we knew. We will help explain our presence to your world leaders. Over the next few hours, Du Han watched as the facility became the center of careful diplomatic talks. The aliens revealed themselves to select government officials, explaining that Earth had passed an important test. The key, they explained, had found exactly the right person, someone who understood both humanity's struggles and its potential. As the crisis ended and the world leaders left, Ji Woo found Du Han looking out at the night sky through one of the facility's windows. How did you know what to say to them? She asked. Du Han smiled. Sometimes the best diplomats are the ones who know what it's like to be on the outside looking in.